morning. I am Lavina Emma. Welcome to Market Insights, and thank God it's Friday. So this morning we are examining a critical aspect of Nigeria's human capital development, the impact of foreign education on our economy. Now, we all know someone who has gone abroad for studies. Maybe it was your child, it could be your neighbor, it could be a close friend to you, a relative, or even you. The allure of world-class universities and the promise of a brighter future are undeniably strong. But how does this trend affect our nation as a whole? On the one hand, foreign education exposes Nigerians to global best practices, innovative thinking, and networking opportunities. Many return home equipped with skills to drive entrepreneurship, innovation, and growth. On the other hand, the brain drain phenomenon persists. Talented individuals choose to remain abroad, contributing to foreign economies instead of Nigeria's own. The financial outflow is staggering, with estimates suggesting over $1 billion annually. Now, that's a whole lot of foreign currency leaving our economy. So where do we stand in all of this? Is foreign education a net gain or loss for Nigeria? The answer, as with most complex issues, is probably somewhere in between. Now, what we need is a balanced approach. We must invest heavily in our local education system to make it world-class, while also encouraging our talented youths to seek global exposure. So on today's show, we will discuss the benefits of foreign education for Nigerian professionals, the economic costs of brain drain and capital flight, strategies to encourage diaspora engagement and knowledge transfer, government initiatives to develop local education infrastructure, and the most interesting of all, success stories of Nigeria's driving impact after foreign education. Let's look at how trading was at the Nigerian Stock Exchange for this week. So we're looking at trading activities from Monday, 12th August 2024 to Thursday, 15th August 2024. Trading activities is still taking place right now at the Nigerian Exchange, so we can't talk about today's own. Okay, so transactions on the floor of the stock exchange as of Thursday, August 15th, sustained a fourth-day consecutive bearish sentiment. And that means transactions have been closing on a negative note this week from Monday to Thursday. So we'll focus specifically on Thursday. The all-share index declined by 0.10%. That's for Thursday, settling at 97,100 points from the previous close of 97,199 points. This brings the year-to-date at 31.27%, the month to date to a negative 0.64%, and the week to date to a negative 1.52% respectively. The market's capitalization closed at 55.132 trillion naira with an aggregate of 271 million units of shares traded at over 7,233 deals, valued as 3.5 trillion naira. The market's breadth closed negative, with 14 equities gaining while 31 equities declining. So that's the stock market report for today, Thursday, Thursday, 15th August. So we can now get right into our discussion for this morning, which is the impact of foreign education on the Nigerian economy. And I have two guests joining us virtually for this discussion. I have Mr. Segun Shokbiton, the principal partner for Woodridge and Scott Consulting. And my second guest is Asaajukorede Boaz A. He's the founder, Ara-Rocks Creative Crafts Institute in Jos. So welcome, gentlemen, to Market Insights.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay, good morning, and I'm glad to have you both on the program. Okay, so let me start with Mr. Segun Shokbiton first. The impact of foreign education on Nigeria's economy, as I mentioned during my introduction, a whopping $1 billion annually is what is the total amount that leaves our economy when people, whether it's students, whether it's people going out, leaving the country for their professional studies, leave they spend a whole lot of foreign currency to do this. And all this money is being spent, or rather is being invested in these European countries or North American countries. Now, let's first of all start with Mr. Segun Shokpito. What is the impact of this on our economy right now?
Okay, thanks for having me again. I think you could look at it from a positive point of view, or you can also look at it from a negative point of view. Two sides to every coin. On the negative side, one of the biggest impacts that this has is the pressure that it puts on our foreign currency exchange rates. And the CBN governor actually did allude to this, in one of the presentations he made to the National Assembly earlier in the year. The figures that, in fact, he put out was worse than the numbers that you just quoted. He said in 9 months that we spent $1.3 billion on foreign education alone. If you project that into 1 year, we're talking potentially about $1.6 billion US dollars. As a percentage of our total annual foreign exchange outflows, it's significant. We're talking about 3-4% of the total figures that we spend on every year in foreign currency. So if we're able to stop that, and if we're able to get all of those people that are going out of the country, maybe not all, because you would always have some that have their other reasons. But if you get a significant number of those people to stay back and study at home, then you save all of that foreign currency, and you invest all of that money back into the Nigerian system. So that's on the negative side. Of course, on the positive side, it's that all of these people that are going out, they automatically become diasporans. And if you have a very healthy diaspora community out there, then they will always invest back home. In terms of course, they're also going out there to learn, to improve themselves. So they bring all of that knowledge back home, hopefully, either directly or indirectly, and that could add to the economy as well. So you can look at it from either angle and pick the one that catches your fancy the most.
Thank you for that, Mr. Shokpito. Okay, let me move to Mr. Adetunoluwa as an education expert. Now, what is the current state of the higher education in Nigeria compared to the global standards?
Well, thank you. It's important to note the first speaker has spoken very well. I think it was very balanced. Thank you very much. Well, the current state would be note the fact that we're increasing in our efforts towards application. And it's important to note that theoretically, the Nigerian tertiary institutions or Nigerian institutions generally are vast and very knowledgeable when it comes to the theoretical aspect of learning, knowledge, and intelligence. The missing gap has always been the place of application. And the place of application is where the world takes us out all the time. When we get into the ring with global universities and global contemporaries, we are knocked out at the stage of applying knowledge and ensuring that knowledge impacts industry, impacts commerce, impacts everyday activity as touching innovation, invention, enterprise discernment, business opportunities. So when you talk about the curriculums that foster this sort of culture, this sort of thinking, this sort of mindset, we might be lacking in that area a bit. And unfortunately, some of these arguments that we're trying to hold intelligently has made us made certain decisions or certain policies. For instance, when you say that there should be no international training, international travel for all sectors of the economy, this definitely has an advantage when it comes to foreign exchange, when it comes to remittances, when it comes to holding back foreign exchange in the country. However, when you look at it as touching the standard of knowledge exchange, the standard of intelligence exchange, the standard of curriculum richness in the country, you would realize that against that backdrop, it's a huge disadvantage. I think I want to take time to talk about the efforts of the National Universities Commission and in the last 3 or 4 years, which has been pioneered by one of the most brilliant minds I think I've met in the education sector. It was an overhaul of the curriculum of tertiary institutions, which introduced the CCMAS curriculum, which allows for local contenting, allows for practicality and knowledge application, allowing for specialization across disciplines, interacting with innovation, invention, entrepreneurship, and of course the business know-how. Basically pushing application and how education can be industry-centric into the main ball of education.
And what have you? So yes, so yes. Said before, I would like to end where I started by saying that there are efforts in the right direction.
Can you hear me, Mr. Adetuolua? I'm not really hearing you clearly. That's the thing. Okay, we'll get back to Mr. Adetuolua shortly. There seems to be a bit of a technical hitch there. Okay, let me move to Mr. Segun Shokbito now. Can you hear me, Mr. Shokbito?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, now, yes, we've talked about the impacts of this, and figures that were quoted from the Central Bank of Nigeria. But now looking at this, do you really think what sectors are most affected by this brain drain right now?
Look, I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. I think the two that immediately come to mind, that just jumps to my mind, when you talk about what sectors, are the healthcare and technology. So now let's not forget. So if countries like the UK and I think the US, Canada to maybe lesser degree, are deliberately targeting students that are interested in the healthcare sector, especially nursing. So they bring people over, get them to do the certifications, and then port them into their economies. Because they seem to have a bit of a skill gap in those areas. And then, of course, in the tech space, you have a lot of people that are going out there to go, study one form of tech thing or the other, and then begin to work there. In fact, the United Kingdom has this highly skilled immigrant program, and the idea behind that is that if you're in tech, you automatically get a work permit that allows you to stay between 3 to 5 years and work in formal sector there. Just immediately improving your life. So those two areas, but I think it cuts across. I think regardless of the particular sector that you are interested in learning or gaining an education in, the challenge is, the quality of education that we have, in other parts of the world seems to be significantly better than what we have here. So that's one thing. So people that can afford to would rather send their children and their wards abroad to go study. So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, we have to remember that a lot of this money that is being spent is actually not being spent necessarily to gain education. It's actually being spent as a part of an immigration plan. People that just simply want to jump back, and they believe that the pathway to that relocation is simply to say they're going to do some master's program or some doctorate or whatever. Rarely would you find that being in the undergraduate sector? Maybe some might decide they want to go for a second degree undergraduate, and they also jump through that. So it's an interplay of factors, and I think because of that, it does affect all the different sectors of our economy. We're losing potential skill, a skill base, and maybe a potential workforce before we then talk about all of the money that we're basically pumping into all those economies, across the world. The United Kingdom, for example, Nigerians are second only to Indians in terms of the number of students that are foreign students in that country. So that's a huge number that we're talking about. So the impact cuts across, and I think it's something that we do need to begin to look at as a country, because at the end of the day, look, this is the future of our country that we're talking about. So we do have to look back at home and find out what we need to do to keep as many of these people, from going out as possible, or if they go out, to ensure that they come back home to apply the knowledge that they've gained abroad.
Okay, yes, thank you for that, Mr. Shokwiton. Yes, I understand what you're saying. This whole thing is, like you rightfully mentioned, there's the good side and also there's the bad side to it too, apart from the fact that there's the brain drain affecting us as a country. It also has the effects of, like you mentioned, the monetary effects also. But that being said, you said it's not just the tuition that they are paying, there's also the cost of living the country, like the popular phrase they always call it, Sujakwa, out of Nigeria. So, okay, due to all this, if you look at the tuition an international student, maybe from Africa or any other part of the world, pays in for example, a university in United Kingdom is over £22,000 sterling, while a native Briton or anybody from the UK, a citizen, will pay perhaps £7,000 sterling for his or her tuition and other educational needs. But what the international students will pay is always higher. Now, I'm quoting these figures because we've always said that, okay, our education is not, in the federal universities, is not as expensive as what we have with the universities abroad. So it's always, there's this comparison that it's more expensive because it's of better quality. So do you really agree with this sentiment that it's more expensive because the education is of better quality, and that's why most people prefer to put their children, send them abroad, than to put them in our own institutions here in Nigeria?
Well, if you talk about quality, you've got to define what exactly you are looking at. So there's, you look at education, there's the issue of the curriculum, there's the issue of the faculty, there's the issue of facilities. So those three areas, if you want to do a comparative analysis of the Nigerian education and what obtains in other parts of the world, you might argue that in terms of faculty, we've got very, very sound, skilled people that are working in Nigeria who were built and developed in Nigeria, understand the Nigerian system, and therefore can deliver what we need better than what you would get abroad. I've got friends who are professors, and all of that in this part, and I know they're brilliant minds. I think maybe the area that we may need to look at when we talk about the quality, a comparative analysis of quality, will be the curriculum on the one hand, facilities on the other hand. In terms of curriculum, I think we need a radical overhaul, in my opinion. I think that our curriculum has been static for too long, and the world has moved. The world has changed. The things that I learned when I was in university some many, many decades ago may no longer be relevant to the world the way the world works today. AI, for example, what's AI? It's something that we need to take seriously, just giving that as an example, or understanding of cultural, cross-border cultural interactions and stuff like that. Are we teaching that? Because it's a global village that we're operating now as a people, as global citizens. So the curriculum, I think, needs a drastic overhaul for us to compete with universities in other parts of the world. And then, of course, the facilities, in terms of infrastructure, we're far behind. Whether it's the teaching halls, the equipment that lecturers have at their disposal in terms of lecture materials, the boards. Do we have electronic boards, for example, that students can even interact with from their devices, and stuff like that, before we then talk about laboratories here in the sciences, and all of that. So in terms of facilities and infrastructure, we've got a long way to go. And that deficit, that difference is perhaps why you would find that there's such a significant variation in terms of the cost. Let's not forget that, in truth, education is actually subsidized in Nigeria, at least up until recently, until maybe this administration has come on board and is trying to change that. Education has been heavily subsidized. So it's not as if it's actually that cheap. It's that people don't pay actually what is the cost reflective fee, for education in Nigeria. But having said that, we have a long way to go. If we're able to make those improvements, overhaul the sector, bring private capital into it more, then maybe we can improve the overall standards in the system and discourage people from wanting to go abroad.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Shokwito. I'll get back to you shortly. Mr. Adetoluwa, can you hear me now?
So you hear you very clearly.
Okay, now, yes, we've heard what Mr. Shokwito has said, but do you really think a partnership between Nigerian universities and foreign universities can help to bridge this educational gap?
Yes, I agree. I agree with him that cross-pollination, cross-fertilization of ideas and of curriculum development, especially replicating the successes of models that work abroad within the confines of how it would help us locally, basically zeroing it down to our local context and how it can work within our local reality would be a beautiful way of synergy for the education sector. I was saying that policies around restricting travel or restricting interactions and training, knowledge exchanges, intelligence exchanges with international community or international contemporaries might not be the way forward. We can guide, and of course there are real reasons why policies are that way. And I understand how the policies can say foreign exchange or foreign remittances. But it's important to understand that capital flight is not just the most important thing. There's the human capital flight, which we need to take responsibility of. There's a need for us to understand that there's a war. There's a war, and the war is the war for skilled hands. The war is not just the war for skilled hands, but the war for human resource. You understand? The war for human resource. So if you have a potentially trainable human population, the world wants it, even if they are not skilled, but they have just the potential to train. And it's important that the nation starts to take this seriously. The nation starts to see a strategic front, start to make policies, rules, start to make strategies around understanding that they are war. They are war not just for their most potential, not just for their most skilled hands, but their most potential learners and trainable population fraction. It's important that we know that, right? And we start to work towards understanding how to engage this population, this set of mobile trainable learners within our population, and ensure that we allow for something that allows for them to be trained within the country, and even if they need to be trained outside the country, something that allows for them to return. At some point within our conversations, I would love to hold certain perspectives. I would like to put forward certain perspectives on how to achieve that. Let me give an example. For instance, there's no reason why education cannot be passed across, or learning cannot be passed across in local dialects. We've seen this done in Asia, and we've seen it very effective across the world. You know, because we have not taken these cases at our foundations very seriously, it spirals out into this that we cannot handle. So we want people to travel on their own cost. We want them to get into societies where things work very well, and we want them to look at those societies and look back at Nigeria and come back and give the skill back to Nigeria. I mean, it's not a balanced scale. For everyone that has a rational way of thinking, will not think in that way. It means that we must begin to create a system that makes patriotism easy, right? That makes patriotism workable. That makes patriotism part of the thoughts and the DNA of Nigeria. When we start to do that, so for instance, the first speaker talked about loans and aiding education, for instance. If we allow for certain financing towards education, financing towards international trainings, financing towards cross-pollination of ideas and cross-pollination of knowledge and intelligence, we would start to find that both systems enjoy the advantages and the end game of the trained force that we put in place. It has to be a balanced conversation every
Can
time.
I pause your thoughts, please? Mr. Segun Shokbito, looking at everything that you've said so far, we all know that this has a very huge impact, both financially and otherwise. Now, what would you advise the government to do to address the brain drain challenge in such a way that they could perhaps, first of starting up with improving our educational sector? So what would you advise our government to do, Mr. Shokbito?
Well, I think the first thing I would advise, or the first advice I would talk about is what not to do. And I think my colleague kind of hinted at it when he was speaking earlier. You know, I don't think it's a good idea. I've heard, you know, the talks about legislating legislating on this issue and trying to use the force of law to stop people from pursuing, you know, basically what is pursuing their interest and their life, you know, trying to explore the potential that life has to offer them. These are not things that you can legislate, and if you make such laws, then what you will eventually do is that you force people into the dark. You know, so it's better for everything to be out there in the open where you can see it and try to affect it with policy formulation and all of that. So trying to say, oh, people should not go out to go and study, or if you know, those types of, I've heard, you know, talk like that in the National Assembly. I think that would be a bad idea. What we need to do is to, like we've been saying in this conversation, fix our educational sector. And that's, you know, it's easy to say that in just one sentence, but we know that given our journey, where we're coming from and where we need to be, the huge gap between where we are now and where we need to be, it's going to take some doing, and it's going to be very purposeful, planned, you know, process. So we need to fix our educational sector to make the Nigerian educational sector competitive the way it used to be. You know, if you cast your mind back, anyway, for those in my generation, you know, people have friends today who are foreigners who I went to school with in Nigeria. You know, we're still friends today. Cameroonians, Ghanaians, people from all over Africa used to come to Nigeria to study. You know, so it's not as if this thing we're saying is so difficult. So we need to fix our education. We need to take us back, not just to where we used to be, but to where we ought to be by now. So that will, you know, take the pressure off people, you know, who are looking genuinely to go and get better quality education abroad. And then on the other side is, you know, the issue of brain drain, the immigration epidemic that we're currently undergoing. I think the only solution again to that is, you know, fix things at home, you know, make it less attractive for people to want to leave the country, to go and just to go and exist, a lot of the people that are leaving the country are not leaving because necessarily there are better opportunities. In fact, most of them tend to take a pay cut, in quote, on the quality of life that they live here compared to where, what they would be doing over there. But they leave because the basic things down here simply are not working. So let's fix our country, fix the educational sector, fix power, electricity, fix infrastructure, and then these things will go away. People will stay back home. Nobody really wants to go and live in the cold. Most of these countries are much colder than Nigeria is. You go to Canada, and I talk to all my friends there, and it's crazy. It's a real deal. You may not relate with this as somebody who is living in Nigeria, but for them it's a significant change, having to deal with sub-zero temperatures almost all year through. So it's a major sacrifice they're making. They don't want to do it. So if we can fix things back home, you find that these things will stop over time, and the people that go will only be those ones who are going genuinely to look because they believe that there's something they want to do out there that they can't get back home. And that happens all over the world. You've got Americans who travel to Europe because they believe that in France, they can get better education in the arts, for example, in music, in visual arts. And some, the British people who would go to Australia or New Zealand, because they believe it's better there. But those types of things you can't remove. But the kind of problems that we have with people just leaving because things are bad at home, I think the solution to that is to fix the way we are as a country right now.
Thank you for that, Mr. Shokbito. Okay, Mr. Adetolua, now still on the impact of this on our economy now. How can we, because people travel, a lot of people, students, or people who want to improve on their careers, get more degrees, they travel out, maybe they have gotten a scholarship grant, or maybe they have gotten some funding, some loan for this. Now, how can Nigeria as a country, now, how can we leverage on this scholarship grants and loans for economic impact in our country?
Okay. Well, so in terms of grants and loans, the education system must be seen. So let's look at the sources of grants, for instance. Grants come from the place of interest from private sector players, majorly from interest from private sector players, industry players, commerce players, that are looking to encourage certain levels of training or certain levels of education, or are looking to pioneer a certain sort of learning within the institution or the education institution. So the education system must have a robust and a robust training system, or a robust educational system that cuts across several disciplines for you to be able to funnel in or attract grants at a level that.
Well, please, I'm not seeing your head clearly. It's like you're below the frame, please. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So it's important to note that the source of grants or what encourages grants is that you have a system that is robust, and you have a system that spreads across a very number of disciplines where grants interest can flow into. If education is not robust, if the structures and the systems that wield these systems or this learning or expedite this learning is not robust enough or is not standardized enough, grants will not flow to it. So the grant system in the UK or in the US is built around the standard of education, and it's tied to the institutions that best push this level of, or this standard of learning, or this standard of education. So, I mean, this is what leaves the federal government to do things alone, because the standards or the metrics by which federal government spends money is different from the metrics by which private sector considers to spend their own money, right? And federal government is naturally considered as a big spender, not necessarily looking at the factors or the end game. However, private sector operators or players or grants from industries don't work like that. They are more they are more result oriented. They are more target oriented. And if you're going to look at grants, or if you're going to look at a partnership between government, private sector, industry players, commerce and trade, if you want some money flowing towards education in Nigeria, then we're going to need to open the doors. We're going to need to take some of these traits away. I was talking about allowing for local dialect education, um, allowing for engineering to be taught in Yoruba, in Hausa, and in Igbo, allowing for technology technology to be taught as a short course program, and certify that such practitioners, as long as they have the skill, can go ahead and further their lives and do stuff with that certification. All of these things are successful models all across the world. They're not new things. We would need to expedite the knowledge base of Nigeria by opening up the doors. We can guide these things. We can create systems that audit these things. We can create systems that monitor these things. But if we intend um, that this system changes and this system is transformed, there are certain doors that are locked. There are certain policy doors that are locked. There are certain um, engagement doors that are locked. Interactive and cooperative doors that are locked that will need to be swung open. We will need to um, cross. We will need to allow for immerse um, immerse learning. We will need to allow for augmented reality learning. We will need to expedite our knowledge base and take off the chains. We will need to allow for education to be innovated, to be reinvented, to be rethought, because we have a population, a mobile population, um, that is ready to learn, but is stuck by the systems and the structures of learning that are made available to them. It is time that the education we have as of today is made an alternative of many options, and that we start to allow for specialization, specialized institutions, short short knowledge um, innovation labs, reverse engineering education labs, specialized learning, specialized sector-centric learning to start to happen. We must open up these gates if anything is going to happen at all. And that, if we're talking about funding and grants, funding will need to go to this. Grants will start to come in when education is specialized. And it's important that we understand this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, yes, education in our native language is quite a good initiative to improve on our education here in Nigeria, which will be something that will be very good. Okay, still on you, Mr. Adetunoluwa. Now, what measures can we put in place to encourage returnees to contribute to Nigeria's development, not just in education alone, but in other sectors of the country?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
That what measures can we use to, what would you advise to encourage returnees who have studied in foreign universities when returning to Nigeria? Like, what measures can we use to encourage them to contribute to Nigeria's development?
Okay, thank you very much. So, I mean, we all know that technology is a huge part of ensuring that the global community is a part. So the entire world has become a global village, and Nigeria is not excluded, right? It's important that our policies, our will towards and our openness towards global best practices are seen and are tangibly seen as a matter of fact. If we must allow for people that have gone to come back, we will need to create an enabling environment or even allow for them to be able to give their own contributions and submissions from where they are. And we must be willing to create a system that allows for the infusion or the impartation of those ideas or the impartation or the exchanges of those ideas such that they can be implemented when those interactions happen. Without having that, without doing that, it's actually going to be impossible to attract these people back. So, for instance, I want to give you an example. Let's talk about commerce, for instance. If you wanted to start a commerce giant in Nigeria, you wanted to start a commerce giant in Nigeria, and you were a startup that wanted to do that, it will take you a number of years to be able to put that infrastructure together if you were to do a legwork. But with technology, that can be done in less. We've seen companies that have come up with such ideas and have become right here in Nigeria and have become, unicorns across rated globally across the world, right? So it's important to allow technology to facilitate these exchanges. Most of them would want to come back, put on ground immediately. But once technology is put in place and they can see interactions, they can see implementations of their interactions, they can see the impact of their interactions, then it will be easier to start to think about coming down. Since my impact is felt online, my impact is felt while I'm trying to use technology, then I think more will be felt if I come on ground. Nobody is going to want to be part of something that is not working. And there's no other way to say it. You must say it in clear terms. So creating methods and channels that allow for interactivity, that allows for cross-pollination, cross-fertilization, knowledge exchanges, allows for conversations, intelligent conversations, and implementation plans around these intelligent conversations will be the best way to go. The second thing will be to look at our models in Nigeria. So there are things that when you get abroad, there are shifts in your mind, there are shifts in your cognitive methods of assimilation. If I see that every time I relate back home, there is a gap, or there's not even an understanding of what it is I'm saying, I would rather remain within the confines of an environment that is speaking my language. We need to understand that knowledge, intelligence, and education has become a language, and it's a language that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adetunoluwa.
Thank you
For your time this morning on Market Insights. I also want to thank Mr. Segun Shokbiton. Thank you very much for your time and your contributions to this discussion. It was great having you gentlemen on the program this morning. I hope you could join us in the studios for another discussion.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now let's look at the currency markets this morning. So we're looking at how the dollar has fared, the selling price of the dollar this week from Monday to Friday. And this is with a focus on the Central Bank of Nigeria rate. So for this week, for Monday, 12th of August, the selling rate of the dollar was 1,515 Naira to $1. On Tuesday, it was the same price. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday was 1,515 Naira to $1. And on Thursday, it still maintained that same figure, 1,515 Naira. Then on Friday, it reduced to 1,500 Naira. So that's the currency updates. Strictly the selling price of the dollar, the CBN rate selling price of the dollar for this week from Monday to Friday. Okay, thank you very much for watching the program Market Insights this morning. As we talked about the impact of foreign education on the Nigerian economy, I also want to thank my guests, Mr. Segun Shokbiton and Mr. Asaajukorede Boaz A for joining us this morning and for sharing insights into this discussion. Many thanks for watching the program. I am Lavina Emma. Do stay tuned to the news update on SOUQ News Television.